Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 11th day of July. Well, it is a beautiful day out here in Brisbane, 11 degrees and glorious sun shining out there, so it is quite good. The cold weather is still quite here, but it's a little bit more manageable, or maybe it might be that we are sort of getting used to it. Well, what a big weekend it has been. So many things that have taken place. We will bring to you reports and glimpses of most of them, maybe from tomorrow. And if you had missed that interview of Madhu Khanna when she interviewed Pinky Singh, it is in Hindi, but it's already on our channels, meaning on our Facebook channel and also on YouTube. So when you get a chance, please go and have a look at that. Quite a comprehensive, in-depth, and very expert questioning there by Madhu Khanna. So once again, there's so many things that we're going to be talking about this week. Tomorrow we'll have Chandra Kanchana and Gautam Ahuja here when they will be talking about the Science Sansthan. And of course, on Saturday we had the Sai Baba Palki Festival by Guru Sai Saleswara in Virginia. And what a big function that was, and so many people who came there, very well organized, good to see the police presence and the support of the wider community. So it was a wonderful program there as well. And yesterday there was the changeover high tea for the RCBI, which is the Rotary Club of Brisbane International, and would like to congratulate incoming President Arun Raniga. He takes over from Suhasini. So there's so many things that have happened in the weekend. It's just been very, very busy and full on. But right now, let's get back into the news. Well, the big news is, the floods are subsiding in New South Wales, and people are returning home to face the aftermath.
While floodwaters across the Hunter have receded, in and around Raymond Terrace, some streets still resemble lakes.
The rain that we are all seeing shouldn't make an overall impact. It may slow the rate at which the water does go down, but we shouldn't see any major increases.
Now the water's dropped, pub owner Chris Books can see this flood has wreaked damage like never before.
It basically just touched here.
Wow.
And whereas 2007 came through pretty much at bar height.
He doesn't have insurance and estimates he's down at least $100,000.
We've lost all our stock. We've lost all our kitchen, fridges, freezers, because once they go underwater, there's a big bacteria problem with floodwater.
Plans to reopen in a couple of days now dashed after seeing the extent of the damage.
That's our second ice fridge. Our last ice fridge floated away in the March floods, and it's up around the corner there somewhere. We just found that actually yesterday.
Further north at Hinton, the SES reunited Rottweiler Savvy and Chocolate Lab Marley with their frantic owner.
Presume these are your dogs?
The two exhausted dogs were found washed away in floodwaters in the Hunter River.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Oh my girls.
While at Millers Forest, a big rescue mission for some small flood victims.
We were notified that there's about 3 miniature horses that were trapped by the floodwaters.
Crews from Victoria, Queensland and New South Wales joined forces to locate, sedate and move the animals to safer ground.
It was very challenging today. The floodwaters were very high.
The animals are now under the care of vets while rescue crews continue working to save people still in need.
They're rescuing people that are trapped in cars in the water at the moment. There's also supplying food and medication to some of the people that are isolated in the local communities.
The recovery effort will continue throughout the night. Madeline Lewis, ABC News.
Showers continued to fall over the Hawkesbury region today, but it didn't stop the clean-up effort. Devastated locals were busy counting the cost of the latest flood crisis. Adrian Reardon reports.
That's the one we just had. For Paul Harrigan, the floods are never ending, and it's taking a toll.
If you can't enjoy it because it's flooding every 6 to 12 months, there's not much point.
He loves living by the Hawkesbury River, but can't afford insurance.
You can't get it, you can get it, but you'd have to have a separate mortgage to pay the premium every year, so it's just not viable.
But while the cleanup continues, there's a new storm brewing. Concerns that apartment owners are set for a major jump in insurance costs.
Because insurance companies are no longer wanting to actually go into those locations which have repeated flooding. There's no coverage from government, there's no coverage from insurance companies, and so they're faced with the bill because there's nobody else to pay.
They're calling on the federal government to expand the $10 billion Northern Australia reinsurance pool that only came into effect this month.
What we're seeing is other parts of Australia being affected, and that $10 billion insurance pool is not going to go as far as we had anticipated.
But the government at this stage is saying no.
The best thing which can be done to put downward pressure on insurance premiums is to help make sure our communities have preventative flood works put into place to begin with. You know, that's involving making sure that planning decisions don't greenlight houses and properties being built in inappropriate floodplain zones.
Although floodwaters have receded, the wet weather has not eased and the recovery continues. Residents are continuing to remove debris from their property, fences are destroyed and the roads are covered in potholes. $340 million worth of disaster payments have been processed in the past 3 days.
These are modest payments. What we do going forward will be the subject of Cabinet discussion.
But for now, these water-weary residents are focusing on the job at hand. Adrian Reardon.
And as you can see that there's a lot of damage there. Now, do you reckon there should be some system where, if people are affected by that, maybe, some people had insurance, some people didn't have insurance, but this is a natural disaster and it is the state and the government. Should there be some assistance to people who are affected? I feel so. I think, everyone should be, well, of course, people who can afford insurances had insurance, but they will also have a bit of a battle trying to fill in all the paperwork, prove this and have all the photos and all that. I think there must be some more clearer, unique method of compensation in natural disasters like this, where the government should come in and, not just rely on the insurance companies there as well. Well, right now, the news that nobody wants to hear. What news is that? That's about the growing fears of COVID right here in Queensland.
Savouring the final hours of holidays, Madison Proudlove hopes to return to a fuller classroom.
Before it was nearly the holidays, loads of people were away, and on one day it was me and my friends and there was 10 people in our class.
The Year 2 Ferny Grove student has had COVID twice, but still plans on taking precautions.
Mrs. Foster, our teacher, always says that we have to go wash our hands.
The M1 was slow going ahead of the third term, which coincides with Queensland's third wave.
It has all the hallmarks to be the biggest wave we're going to have so far.
Schools are preparing for more staff shortages as teachers become infected.
It will be very, very challenging. In a lot of instances, we've had classes combined. We've also had some use of remote learning just to keep classes operating.
The state recorded more than 4,100 new cases, with nearly 40,000 active cases. 744 are in hospital, the most since February.
Thousands of health staff are off sick because of COVID or the flu. That's having an impact on our planned care.
But mask rules won't change.
If you can't social distance, or if you'd like to, wear a mask. It's not going to hurt you at all.
Masks are not mandatory in state schools, but the government supports them being worn. Not that they're popular.
It's annoying.
Tomorrow, more Queenslanders become eligible for a second booster. The government recommends the fourth dose for people aged 50 and older. Those 30 and over may choose to have the shot. Unlike the school holidays, the health threat is far from over. Alexander Lewis, ABC.
So the health threat is far from over, as was mentioned, because, here we are in Queensland, and now people are talking about this other wave. So the message is very clear. If you are eligible, go and get that 4th vaccination done as well. And of course, just a quick reminder as well, if you have not had your flu vaccine so far, you must get that done as well. Well, right now there's been a national call to keep food affordable, to keep the, food crisis out, because, one of the commodities that's much needed out in the communities is food. So government regulation and subsidies must be in place to make sure that food is not unaffordable, so that it is across the board, everyone should have access to that basic necessity.
It's getting harder to eat your veggies or just eat in Australia.
Broccoli $10.50 a kilo, beans $12 a kilo, it's just ridiculous.
Meat prices have gone up, everything's gone up.
Cost of living's pretty hard at the moment.
We're actually calling it a food price crisis.
Deakin University's Health Transformation Institute tracks prices and says veggies are 7% higher in general. Lettuce is the biggest riser. It's 150% more than 12 months ago. Broccoli is up 72% and tomatoes have also spiked. Floods have caused some of these increases and global fuel prices are also a factor, particularly for other key foods. Spaghetti is 13% higher, bread 10%, and milk has seen a similar rise. Soaring costs have seen long lines at food banks and people making tough choices at the checkout.
I'll just buy what I need on the day and I'll make sure it's as cheap as possible, yeah, and I don't eat much because of it.
Unfortunately, buying a lot less fresh produce.
We know poor diet is a leading risk factor for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, a number of types of cancers. We need a national plan. We don't have a food strategy, a food system strategy for the country.
You can do it through subsidies, you can do it through taxes, you can do it by regulating the way specials are placed on different food groups.
The ABC has contacted the federal government about the need for a long-term food strategy. In the short term, however, health experts say Australians need to keep nutrition a priority.
Frozen vegetables are incredibly healthy. They're a great cheap way of getting more vegetables into our lives. Maybe looking at what's in season, shopping at smaller grocers, which can often be a bit cheaper.
And some foods are a bit cheaper. Bananas, oranges and apples are all less expensive now than they were 12 months ago. And other foods like carrots, sweet corn and eggs, those prices are stable for now. Iskandar Razak, ABC.
Well, there you go. So I think what the reporter said there about subsidies, or regulating so that the prices are maintained. So, we don't want the farmers to be out of pocket because it's not an easy job and they're doing it, day in, day out there to feed the nation, to feed everyone. So they must be very well looked after. But, then when we look at people, the consumers, people need to have, if the fresh produce prices go up, people will go for more processed foods, and that will result in an unhealthy nation, which will in long term put a burden on the health system because of the poor health. So, it is in the long term interest of the government to look at that call, which is the call has been for making sure regulating, and there's a long term strategy in place to safeguard the food prices. Well, on the topic of food, one of the other areas we're going to look at is now people are eating out a lot more than they used to before. Well, there are many reasons. Inner city living, inner city apartments have become a lot more trendy. People like to sit there. And of course, live in the city, live in high rises, live in more sophisticated areas. But what does that do? That says, all right, you don't have too much time now for cooking at home. So, when you're looking at that, if you don't have too much time for cooking, or what do? You go out, and that's become a trend. And of course, now with menu log and similar food deliveries, people are opting in for food deliveries. So what it means is someone has to prepare all that food in the restaurants and all this the delivery food. So all the chefs all of a sudden are in great demand.
Hideki Hayashi has been feeding hungry West Australians for 14 years. He survived the pandemic, a challenge that saw a quarter of the country's chefs quit as restaurants struggled with restrictions. But there's renewed demand for chefs and other hospitality staff as the industry rebounds.
A lot of restaurants I know looking for kitchen hand, waitress, staff, but at the moment, as a COVID, no one apply.
The National Skills Commission is projecting a booming recovery for the sector that will surpass pre-COVID levels. The number of chefs nationally is set to increase by nearly 14%, from about 80,000 to more than 90,000 by 2026.
Everybody eats. Every week you hear of new restaurants opening.
To meet demand, the federal government has added chefs to its list of priority occupations for migrants.
I would maybe add just a splash of water.
And at this independent training provider, enrolments have more than doubled compared to 2019.
I will definitely will insist to finish my school and my work, and I believe that after the knowledge and the skill, one day I will become a great chef.
But Australia's chefs in training
Very nice. Yep.
I love it. I love it cooking bigger plate like a mama, you know.
will need more than a certificate to survive.
Here in Chef Hayashi's restaurant, he hopes the trainees will one day join his kitchen. But he's not sure the government's rosy predictions will make his job any easier.
It's very easy to find the staff, but wrong staff, not right staff. Yes, it's very hard to find right staff who has hospitality in mind.
Chef Hayashi is looking for quality.
Like this.
Not quantity. Case in Ho, ABC.
And there you go. We know he has identified the demand, and we know that the chefs are in high demand. As we discussed in our Migration Ka Safar on Friday with Sumandua, right here from these studios, and that it is the chefs are now on that list. It's a good pathway. But of course, as this restaurant owner there said, he can get people, but he needs right people with the right mindset, not just a certificate to say, I have done the course. So, getting the right people with the right attitude in the workforce is a big challenge, because you can get qualified people, qualifications are there, but the work ethics and, of course, how you get along with others and your ability to work under pressure. A lot of other things come into play as well. Of course, we like to see that our labor force is protected and duly compensated as well. Now, looking at the labor force, so here's this report which is saying there is actually a silver lining to cost of living compared to the labor market.
We're hearing plenty of grim stories about the Australian economy these days. Inflation and interest rates shooting up. We're going through a post-pandemic cost of living crisis. And a recession may be stalking us.
But let's take a moment to celebrate something that's really good. Jobs. In particular, this graph is truly remarkable. There are almost as many job vacancies as there are unemployed people, something that's never happened before. And here's another way of looking at it.
Vacancies as a percentage of unemployed people, going all the way back to 1979. For decades, there were between 1 and 2 vacancies for every 10 people on the dole. Now, it's 9. And in WA, there are 50% more jobs than there are unemployed people to fill them. Demand is bouncing back from the lockdown, so businesses need to hire. But there's been no immigration. The only additional humans in Australia for a couple of years have been babies.
Also, people are changing jobs more often, which is creating more vacancies. Businesses are starting to lift wages in response to labour shortages, but they're having to be dragged kicking and screaming to that. Wages growth is picking up, but it's still only 2.5%, which is half the inflation rate. Now, here's RBA Governor Philip Lowe exactly a year ago.
And until wage growth is above 3%, I have trouble with the notion that inflation could be sustainably in the 2 to 3%, which would require the dynamics in the labour market to be very different to those that have been at work over the past decade.
Well, guess what? The dynamics of the labour market are very different, and the Governor and his colleagues got caught out. Interest rates are going up in 2022, not 2024 as they thought, or 2023, because even though wages growth is still below 3%, the RBA thinks it'll be above that very soon, and they're preempting it rather than waiting for it to happen. But that's the cloud behind a silver lining. which is a truly amazing labour market.
Of changing times, and it is quite good when they can look at the analysis of what the Reserve Bank governor said exactly a year ago and looking at that metrics now in today's time. Well, for our last local news, we go to Western Australia and look at what is happening with the indigenous.
The historic town of Cossack had its heyday when pearling and gold mining attracted thousands to the Pilbara in the late 19th century. The old buildings are now a tourist attraction. These nearby ruins of a leprosarium have attracted a new investigation by archaeologists.
Today we're here to look at the archaeology of the area. There is some tangible material left behind that will help to consolidate and help to share some of the stories that the elders have already told us about the place.
This photograph shows the leprosarium established in 1910. Over 2 decades, hundreds of Indigenous people with suspected diseases including leprosy were sent here by police and pastoralists.
It is the police and the pastoralists that were diagnosing the Aboriginal people as having disease, and what we know from historical records and archaeological evidence is a lot of people probably didn't have the diseases for which they were incarcerated for.
The evidence gathered here will contribute to truth-telling about what happened at this site, backing up stories of discrimination and harsh treatment.
Truth-telling is very important because you've got to hear the two sides of the stories. If somebody put something up there and to talk about the area and what happened, you know, they need to tell the other side of the story, like the dark side of the story.
The visit to this site is part of a wider ongoing investigation of leprosariums and lock hospitals across northern Australia. You can still see the paths and foundations of this leprosarium, which was one of many across Australia, including one on Palm Island in Queensland, those located on the Channel Island and Mud Island in the Northern Territory, and Bungarun in Derby, all of which were primarily used to incarcerate Indigenous people with medical conditions. Cameron Carr, ABC News, Cossack.
There you are, ladies and gentlemen. Right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. India-China foreign ministers met on the sidelines of G20 meet in Indonesia's Bali on 7 July. A day after the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi wished the Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, on his birthday, the foreign ministers of India and China met on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meet in Bali in Indonesia. While the Dalai Lama has been a matter of contention between the two countries for decades, the border crisis and resolving the current escalation at the LAC in eastern Ladakh remains the top priority for New Delhi. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held an hour-long meeting with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. In a tweet, Minister Jaishankar wrote, quote, "Began my day in Bali by meeting FM Wang Yi of China. The discussion lasted 1 hour, focused on specific outstanding issues in our bilateral relationship pertaining to the border situation. Also spoke about other matters including students and flights," end quote. The situation for Indian students who are stuck in India since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic has been very grim. Most medical students have been urging Chinese authorities to allow them to return to their universities to pursue and complete their education. In mid-June, China announced plans to provide visas to Indian professionals and their families stranded in India for over 2 years following the strict visa restrictions imposed by Beijing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Rishi Sunak, an Indian-origin UK MP, is now a top contender for the UK Prime Minister post after the resignation of UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Rishi Sunak, whose resignation as Chancellor of Exchequer triggered an avalanche of resignations against Boris Johnson, is believed to be a contender for the next UK Prime Minister. If it happens, Rishi will make history not only to become the first Indian-origin man to be the British Prime Minister, but also rule the country that was an empire that once ruled India. Rishi Sunak was picked by Boris Johnson and appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer, his first full cabinet position in February 2020. He is seen by the bookmakers as joint favourite alongside former Defence Secretary Penny Mordaunt. He became hugely popular during the pandemic after crafting a massive package worth tens of billions of pounds to help businesses and workers. Rishi Sunak's grandparents came from Punjab. He has two daughters with Akshata Murthy, the daughter of Infosys founder and billionaire N.R. Narayana Murthy. Rishi and Akshata met while students in California. After a ban on wheat exports, India is now tightening rules for flour too. India will impose restrictions on the export of flour in a fresh move to insulate domestic markets from a global wheat crisis. Wheat grain exports were severely curtailed in May to shore up national food reserves following global shortages and surging prices triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Directorate General of Foreign Trade has said flour exporters will need to seek prior government approval to maintain quality and stabilize domestic prices. Global supply disruptions in wheat and wheat flour have created many new players and has led to price fluctuations and potential quality-related issues, the regulator said in a notice issued on July 6th. India banned all exports of wheat grain without government approval in May, sparking a record surge in global prices and condemnation from other countries. After battling floods, now the Indian state of Assam is bracing for encephalitis surge as floodwaters recede. As the floodwaters recede in Assam, the state is now bracing for a spate of Japanese encephalitis cases. July is the peak time for the infection and cases are already on the rise in the state. Assam has reported 143 acute encephalitis syndrome cases and 16 related deaths so far this year, said the officials of the state unit of the National Health Mission. Of these, 48 were JE cases reported from Lakhimpur, Morigaon, Nalbari, Barpeta, Dhemaji, Kamrup, Shivasakar and Sonipur, said health officials. Some cases were reported from Jorhat and Nagaon too. NHM Mission Director Dr. M.S. Lakshmi Priya chaired a video conference with district health teams on 6 July in view of the rising cases of water and vector-borne diseases. Officials from the state's Integrated Disease Surveillance Program Cell and a National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program Cell also participated in the conference. Assam witnessed devastating floods last month, with rain-related incidents claiming at least 179 deaths so far this year. With the floodwaters now receding and the relief camp inmates returning to their houses, consumption of contaminated water and subsequent health issues have been reported from some areas in the flood-affected regions. "25 ministers from BJP, 13 from Chief Minister Eknath Sena likely to be inducted in the Maharashtra cabinet. 25 MLAs from the Bharatiya Janata Party will likely be a part of the brand new Maharashtra cabinet, while Chief Minister Eknath Shinde's Sena will have 13 MLAs. Apart from CM Shinde and his deputy Devendra Fadnavis, a former Chief Minister of the state, most ministers will be new. Newly appointed Chief Minister Shinde held a meeting with his cabinet while he took charge of his post at the State Secretariat Mantralaya on 7 July. Eknath Shinde took power as the Chief Minister of Maharashtra after leading a coup in the Shiv Sena, which brought down the previous Uddhav Thackeray-led Mahavikas Aghadi government. The Sena will get a ministry for every 3 MLAs and the BJP will get a post for every 4 MLAs according to the formula. The final decision will be taken only after the Supreme Court verdict on July 11th on the possible disqualification of 16 MLAs, including Shinde. The Supreme Court hearing will decide on the validity of disqualification notices sent by Shiv Sena chief Uddhav Thackeray to 16 from the rebel camp, which now claims it is real Sena as Team Thackeray is a minority. Former Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant will take charge as India's G20 Sherpa. Former Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant is going to be India's new G20 Sherpa, as Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal will give up his position as he has been tasked with other pressing duties. With the G20 presidency coming to India in November, a full-time Sherpa is required. who would need to devote a lot of time to numerous meetings that will be held in different parts of the country. Minister Piyush Goyal has been tasked with other pressing duties like the leader of Rajya Sabha, upper house of the parliament, which was given to him after his appointment as Sherpa. This combined with an intensive workload in the ministries like Commerce and Industry, accelerating free trade agreements FTAs, WTO among others, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution and Textiles would limit his involvement in this critical time. Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann gets married for the second time to Gurpreet Kaur, who's a doctor. Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann married Dr. Gurpreet Kaur on 7 July. Bhagwant Mann and Gurpreet Kaur got married in an intimate ceremony in Chandigarh where only family and close friends were invited. AAP MP Raghav Chatta, Delhi Chief Minister and Aam Aadmi Party convener Arvind Kejriwal attended Bhagwant Mann Gurmeet Kaur's wedding ceremony in Chandigarh. This is Bhagwant Mann's second marriage. He and his first wife had divorced almost 6 years back. Bhagwant Mann has 2 children who live in US and Australia with his first wife. Gurpreet Kaur completed her MBBS from a private university in Haryana state in 2018. She has 2 elder sisters who are settled abroad. Reliance Retail to bring American brand Gap back in India. Reliance Retail on 6 July entered into a long-term partnership with Gap Inc. to bring iconic American fashion brand Gap to India. With this deal, the Reliance Industries retail arm has become the official retailer for Gap across all channels in India. Under the partnership, Reliance Retail will introduce Gap's latest fashion offerings to Indian consumers through a mix of exclusive brand stores, multi-brand store expressions and digital commerce platforms. The deal is aimed at leveraging Gap's position as a leading casual lifestyle brand and Reliance Retail's established competencies in operating robust omni-channel retail networks and scaling local manufacturing and driving sourcing efficiencies, Reliance Retail said in a statement. Indian ministers Smriti Irani, Jyotiraditya Scindia get additional portfolios as 2 Indian ministers resign. Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi and RCP Singh on 6 July resigned from the Union Cabinet a day before the completion of their Rajya Sabha term. Prime Minister Narendra Modi praised their contributions during their ministerial tenure. President Ramnath Kovind accepted their resignations and reassigned the Minority Affairs and Steel portfolios which were held by Naqvi and Singh respectively. Women and Child Development Minister Smriti Irani has been given the additional charge of Ministry of Minority Affairs, while Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia has been given the additional charge of Ministry of Steel. A new song called Fitur from the upcoming Ranbir Kapoor film Shamshera has been released. Yash Raj Films announced the release of Fitur song from Ranbir Kapoor and Vani Kapoor starrer Shamshera. The song is sung by Arijit Singh and Neeti Mohan and is composed by Mithun. Yash Raj Films announced the release of the latest song via their Twitter handle. In the tweet, Vaira wrote, "That forever kind of love." In the song, Ranbir and Vani are seen doing romance in different places ranging from a desert to a glacial river. With changing locations, Vani is also seen in a variety of dresses. In the video, they're also seen dancing and riding a horse together. That's all in today's bulletin.
And thank you very much, Anubhuti, for that update today. When we look at the wedding of Bhagwant Mann, of course, once again, congratulations. And there was a lot of commentary on Facebook and on social media. It's interesting to see everyone's point of view, but then everyone has a right to their own point of view. Right or wrong, everyone's got a view. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in this segment, as we will be updating all our functions and events of what's already taken place, and we'll try and bring some reports of all the functions and events that have taken place, so that we are all up to date. And so until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Thank you so much for everyone for joining in and for your comments as well. And until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me.